I can switch it for you.
That's okay. So my name is David Acevedo, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself first. And the talk I'm going to give is called "Why Data is Sometimes Not Enough." So I studied biology in Princeton University, and one of the frustrations I had there as a biologist is that when I would talk to some people, it seemed that no matter how much data you gave them, they just weren't convinced. You keep getting this. No, I'm not convinced. Can you give me more data? And you would go and find more data and bring it in, and still nobody got convinced. So I started thinking about that since then, and it's been a number of years. And then I wrote a book recently, and this is from the, like an extracted from that chapter. So you might have a person in your life, a client, a boss. Web designers tend to have clients that don't seem to understand technology very often. That you have trouble communicating a point across, and they seem to not get the data side of it. When you talk to another engineer, they get it right then, like that. You talk to this person, and you're just spinning your wheels, and nothing seems to be happening. So they may be asking you for more information. They seem unsure, and the kind of trap here is that if you give them more information, that might actually not help. So there tend to be two types of people: data-centric and non-data-centric, for lack of a better term. And the data-centric people are people who are used to dealing with data. They're people who've been trained or have trained themselves to do that, like engineers, scientists, and the like. These are people who are comfortable changing their opinion based on data. And the non-data-centric people is pretty much everybody else. And which do you think is more common in the world? The non-data-centric people most of the people are non-data-centric. So whenever if you're an engineer or a software developer, you tend to talk to a lot of engineers all the time. You develop a shorthand. You know how to get things across very quickly to your coworkers. But then you hit some one of these persons, and those shortcuts might get you into trouble. And part of the reason is we don't make rational decisions. So we want our decisions to have this patina of rationality, this veneer that kind of justifies us having them. In reality, they stem from a gut feeling. We make them emotionally. We make them based on our prejudices, based on our previous experiences, based on our tons of different reasons, but not rational. We can change our opinions later, but typically we make them on our gut feelings are not rational. But we really like having those reasons to justify our decisions. So once we've made a decision, we really like to come up with reasons to justify having made it. So whatever decision it is, whether you went with Rails versus Django, you were going to have a reason for it. Even if you just looked at them and said, I kind of like this one better, but that didn't seem like a good reason, so you'll have all these technical or all these rational reasons to support that. So one of the other issues that happens is that once you make a decision, particularly the person you're trying to convince might have already made their mind, is that we don't like to change our minds or change our decisions once they've been established because of a couple of things. We like lining up behind ourselves, as Dan Ariely puts it, who's the author of Predictably Irrational. That's like, once we made a decision, we like to confirm it. We like to kind of reinforce it, if you will. So once we make a decision, we kind of queue behind our own selves in making decisions like that. The example he uses in the book is of Starbucks. It's like if you go to Starbucks and had a wonderful experience at Starbucks, you're more likely to go to Starbucks again. And in a way, you're making a line with yourself from the past, the one that went to Starbucks and had a great time, and then you kind of keep a queue to reinforce the decision. The other one is that we like to keep our options open as long as possible. We hate closing options, even ones we don't want to take. We like keeping our doors open. It's just a natural psychology thing. Once the value of something is not necessarily related to how beneficial it might be. It might just be that we're afraid of closing the door, even if we're never going to take it. So that, skateboard that you hold on to when you're, nowhere near a place where you're going to use it, and I held on to my skateboard till I was 30, and I skated once, but I just didn't want to throw it out in case I ever wanted to use it. And it's just kind of like that thing, it's like, there's no reason for me to keep it. I should have sold it a long time ago. But it seemed like I might have, at one point use it. So this is one of the reasons we like to kind of sit in our decisions once they're made. And then the other one, I think, is because we came up with all these awesome reasons for making our mind that we'd have to give up if we just change our mind, So that creates a bit of an inertia that kind of sets people up, in their own previous decisions. It's kind of like a confirmation bias. It's like once you made a decision, you see stuff that supports your own viewpoint. The other ones, we don't like certain things, even though we think we do. I kind of remember where I got this source from, so I didn't put it in there. But people don't like having too many options to choose from. Seems to be like 6 seems to be optimal, and more than 6 is like, whoa, too much. And weirdly, that reaction seems similar with information. So if you overwhelm a person with information that you could process very quickly, this non-data centered person maybe get overwhelmed, and rather than wade through it, they can just shut down and say, oh, it's too much. Kind of the same way we had to pick from 20 different models of a computer, it would be much more hard than if we just pick between 2. Because absence of options clarifies the mind in a way. So one more thing that data people run into, and that's conventional wisdom tends to really favor things that are easy to understand, that are simple, convenient, and comfortable. And if whatever you're trying to explain, particularly like say you have a conversation with your boss about something that, if it's not simple, convenient, and comfortable, it makes it a lot harder to kind of accept. Just because we have this bias where, like we like that kind of stuff. And this is from Freakonomics, this quote, that things that are easier to understand tend to become the way we, this is the way things are, whether or not they are that way or not. So when you hit upon a person that is trying to convince, and you give them data and they're not convinced, you may ask them, hey, why aren't you convinced of anything I can do? And they give you reasons, and you shouldn't really pay too much attention to those reasons because they might not be the real reason. So, take them with a grain of salt. They might be asking for something they don't actually need. And they might be asking for something if you give them to them might actually make them less convinced. So how do you convince these people data is not helping you? Data might be hindering you. So there's a couple of things you can do. One is to employ the ancient tools of rhetoric. Logos, ethos, and pathos is from a book called Thank You for Arguing. I got this. And it's kind of really interesting. Logos is using logic, reason, a reasonable argument. Ethos is an appeal to the reputation of a person. And pathos is an appeal to emotion. So logos, you make a logical argument. Hey, if we do this, we can make more money, kind of thing. Ethos is like, look, I'm the expert in the field, kind of trust me, And pathos is like, look, we really want to do a great experience for the customer. We want them to have an easy workflow and find that emotion that connects to that customer. So it can be an argument to, hey, this is really cool, this is really simple, this is really fun, this is really easy, as opposed to, this is the best option logically. It could just be emotional. But more effectively is finding out what the other person is hung up on first. And that's what I call the hook. And here's where we play that video. Okay. Now, the reason I picked this video is this video actually made me realize something very. This is actually where, after seeing this video, I had like an epiphany on this. Because I was wondering what was happening here. And what I realized was this, that people like different things. So this is just a quick review. This guy's name is, by the way, Brandon Wirtz, or Wirtz. And, for him, he has a very definite opinion. Funny thing is, his analysis is pretty close to what I think is correct, but his conclusion is completely the opposite of mine. Like if I don't have fun programming, I have no business programming. I'd rather do something else that's a little bit more fun. That than if it's going to be a slog, geez. So for me, having fun is kind of an important thing, and that's kind of part of the design. It's designed to make the programmer happy, according to Max. So people want different things. So for Brandon, getting it done is very important. For me, fun is very important in my work as a programmer. So these hooks give you a big approach on how to convince people. If you approach me, hey, you should learn Python because Python is fun, like the SKCD, this is from the SKCD, it's fun. That might be a very appealing to me. But if you tell me, look, Python, you can get it done, I'm like, whatever, Ruby's fun. Why should I learn another one? But if Python's fun, that might be appealing to me. Same thing with Brandon. If he's in a get or done mode, so hey, dude, Rails is very productive too. It's a job-worthy tool. That might be a far better argument to use with him than telling him, hey, Rails is fun, because he doesn't care about that. That would put him off from it. So now that you know kind of what the person emotion, kind of this gut reaction that he's having to whatever you're saying, it's a lot easier to then use rhetoric. Then you can use a logical argument that makes sense. Hey, Rails is also productive. You can appeal to your reputation, or even just go straight to the emotion. Hey, Rails is very workable. You can do all those things. It's very business-like too. So this is like the approach I think really works. It's that once you have that hook, then you can really then kind of penetrate. But the problem is that sometimes, particularly with, say, clients, they're focused in on something, because business really favors a focused mind. There's a lot of things happening in the business world at any one point in time, so the ability to focus is very, very important. But then you lose sight of the big picture. So you just need to have an eyes to the sky kind of conversation. And it's like most conversations we have are transactional. It's like, food, payment, hello, goodbye. It's very exchange based. They're not about who you are. So when you have like an eye to the sky conversation, well, people care about it. And I'm reminded of this quote by Theodore Roosevelt, that people don't care how much you know. They're not really going to care too much about what you have to tell them until they know how much you care. So if you're talking to your boss, who might be really, really caring about profits or about the health of the business, he may not care about this very small tidbit of programming expertise unless he knows how much you care about his business or the business. I got this concept of transactional from Just Listen. It's a book on negotiations by a local doctor here. And the transactional communications really are impersonal and shallow. So if you're having a communication with your client about do this, do that, and it's just this, you're not going to get to figure out what this person really cares about. So you may not actually know what their hook is, what their emotion, what is happening. And you might be suffering from this hyper-focus on this one item and this inability to look at the big picture. So maybe actually trying to help them, but be unable to get through to them. Whereas a big sky conversation is really about, it's about who they are. It's about how they think, what they want to achieve. And I really love this picture. I got this from a blog, and it's kind of like that. You can totally tell that this kid is not in a mindset of give me and take, but looking at who he wants to be. So, like I was saying, business really values focus, and then you lose perspective. And this is like, I don't know if you guys have seen, this is the Lord of the Dance. I don't know if you guys know who Joseph Campbell is. Joseph Campbell explains what this person here is doing down on the ground. This person here is actually, this is the best image I could find, but he's actually kneeling down looking at a leaf. And he's so intent and focused on the leaf that he can't even notice there's a god dancing on his back. So all this glory, wonderful thing happening on top of him is completely lost because he's focused on the leaf. And that point of this was that if you're just totally focused, you really can be missing all this wonderful stuff going on around you. And you can also lose sight of your ultimate goals. And that happens to your clients, that happens to your boss, that happens to everybody. So this also has an impact on ethics, by the way. So like if someone's doing something that you consider kind of iffy, this is a good time to have a good eyes to the sky conversation, because that's part of the reason that happens is they're so focused on one thing, they don't see the big picture. So to recap, data to the data people, use a different approach for non-data people, find out what their emotional hook is, what their gut feeling is, then use logic, reputation, and emotion to make your case. Have a big sky refocusing, non-transactional conversations when you're too focused on the nitty-gritty to see the big picture. And these are some of the books I got the ideas from. And down there is the cover of my book. And then if you guys have any questions. It's How Environmentalism Can Succeed, and you can just go to my website. I haven't released it yet, but I'll have it soon. Questions?
So, what was the motivation for starting the book? What initially were you encountering obstacles in your presentations besides the experience at Princeton?
Well, the whole book started. Two things motivated me. One, another of my classmates published a book not that long ago, and I thought if he can do it, I can do it.
Okay.
But the whole genesis of the topic is that when I was in college, I noticed that scientists and politicians seemed to be talking two completely different languages, and particularly when relating to certainty. Like I kept hearing something like this kind of going on. The politician would ask the scientist, "Well, how certain are you of, in this case, global warming or climate change?" 70, 80% sure. He goes, "Well," the lawmaker would say, "Are you sure or you're not sure?" It's like, "Well, 70, 80%. Well, then you're not sure. So come back to me when you're sure." And the scientist is like, I 100%. I can never. There's always the chance that I could be wrong. I cannot give you a guarantee. And so I noticed that. I also noticed that people would ask for more data, get more data, and get less convinced. And it was like, they asked for more data, and we provided them, and now less action. What's happened? So I was wondering, so what is it that would motivate people to go from thinking about it to being convinced to taking action? And that's kind of what I was thinking about this for a long time, and that's kind of where I noticed, like, the big certain thing is like for a scientist, certainty is absolute. To be 100, you're never 100% sure, because you have to allow the possibility that more information will come by and your model will be expanded or improved or bettered, or things will change. But for a lawmaker, that's typically a lawyer, certainty is very binary. You're either guilty or not guilty. You're not in between. And I noticed that, and that's really good. Any other questions?
I might have been too focused on one part of your presentation and then was distracted, but the eyes to the sky conversation technique, how can that convince someone of something? Is it someone who's not data centric?
That is to find out what they care about and also get them off being focused.
Because they could be focused on like a particular negative aspect of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you say, step back and say, hey, let's talk about
the customer experience. Let's talk about the customer experience. What do you want to achieve with your website? Kind of thing.
I guess I just didn't see the flow from the first three things on your last previous slide to the pie in the sky conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, but it's about how, like, I've seen conversations where someone is focused in on a very, like, what I call penny wise, pound foolish. That happened to me in my previous job, but people will be so focused on making this thing profitable while all that focus was costing them elsewhere in the business. And I could not figure out how to get them out of this miniature focus to see the big picture. And this seems to be a really good way. When I read this in this book, Just Listen, which is really good, which was recommended to me by a Scrum Master. and it really like gave me like, oh, so that's what's happening. These people are just submersed in the nitty gritty, and they're not seeing the big picture. The term I used to sketch from that book, I just directly slipped it.
For me, it's uncomfortable though because I am a data-centric person, so I'm more transactional in my discussion. But like, why am I going to talk to you unless I'll get something out of it, or I'm trying to tell you something? So it's tough to step back and say like, let's talk about feelings, or I don't know, people know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Like, well, a good way of asking people is try to get them out of this. Like, how do you get to do what you do? Like, how did you get to be? Say you're talking to your boss. How do you get to be CEO? How do you? And if you're talking to a client, what do you want your business to provide for the client, or what? Because a lot of the times people also get like in this, I sell rice and you pay me for rice and that's it. But the experience really is what you're trying to create in a website. It's not just the transaction, So sometimes you got to move to, well, what experience do you want to create? What feeling do you want the client to have?
It's like a sales guy technique.
Kinda. But that reveals what's important to the person. Because the person might be very focused on something because they want the transaction to be easy. And then you might be trying to explain something how it's quick or how it's technically more feasible, but for them all they care about is it for being easy for the client. And you can tell them how technically brilliant this transaction is going to be, but if it's not easy, if it doesn't satisfy their concern, their emotion for it being easy, it's going to be much tougher for you to convince them. Whereas if you can show, hey, this thing, the Python is fun, dude, it really can hook the person, as opposed to, hey, Python is not fun, but you got to learn it because it's business, get it done. That kind of, so that thing. Am I over time?
No, I actually had a question to the point you're trying to make. I mean, It sounds like what you're saying is that people become focused in on a particular detail, and that what you're suggesting is not that you distract them with something else, but that you raise their view up so that detail is still there. But you're talking about the bigger picture, and then you see what they focus on from there.
Yeah.
There's not a small detail available from that higher level. There's some other area that they're looking at.
Yeah, but even if you raise them up, sometimes they realize that the detail they're fighting for is not important in the big picture, because then they can connect with what you're trying to do for them in the big picture.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of lead, you can say, look, I know this is scary, but I'm the programmer, trust me. Appeal to I'm trying to watch out for your interest. But they'll believe you that you're watching out for your interest because they know their interest. If they know you don't know, it can be really tough to just, hey, trust me. Why? Whereas if they know that you know and you're watching out for what they care for, it's a lot easier to get through to them. And that's like one of the, I would say, things lacking in this book, which I don't recommend that book. I recommend just listen. All the other books are great, this one's so yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.